Hello everyone, my name is Muayad Jajo. I'm from the Department of English at Komar University. I'm here to make this presentation on Oswald's poem, Dart, and the title of the presentation is Fluvial Abodes, Place Power in Alice Oswald's Dart. When Alice Oswald's book Dart was published in 2002, it immediately won international recognition. The entire volume is in fact just a single poem, and it has been classified as a nature poem, an eco poem, and several other subgenres of poetry. The poem is about River Dart, which is in fact the biggest river in the town of Devon in England. And it actually flows from Komar Pool and then in Dartmoor, and then it passes through several towns until it flows into Dartmouth, into the sea. And Oswald herself was working there as a gardener. The poem illustrates this very close relationship between poet and river. And this is not the first time, in fact, that poets and rivers are associated together in poetry. But what makes this poem different is that this bond between river and poet is highly spiritual and also very much extended. To the extent that all the details of the river are portrayed very minutely and spiritually, mythically, and quite metaphorically. So if one reads the poem, they're going to notice immediately this transformation from the beginning to the end of the poem. The beginning representing a state of pristine and primitive childhood, a state of innocence, and that would be the source of the river. So the abode itself, the place itself, is paradisial, heavenly, and it reminds you of the Garden of Eden. That's where the journey starts, and then it goes through a lot of flux and change, and the stages of evolution and development until the river falls into the sea. So the entire place is all symbolic. It's the home to primordial creation, and also to the post-lapsarian state of fall, and then development, awareness, and finally death. Or let's say the return to the source. And this is actually what literally happens to the water of the river. It flows down to the sea and then circulates the planet and then goes back to the source. Dart, for Oswald, also represents the countryside. And one of the critics, in fact, in 2005, observes that, quote, it's the dominant source of inspiration for her poetry, and is her passion for the countryside and the working people she meets. The details, the minute details she portrays in the poem are in fact the fruit of a 3-year period of interviewing the people who worked beside the river. And she spent these 3 years collecting information about the place in order to construct her poetic character sketches. So in her poem, we find a diverse range of characters. Some of them are fishermen, others are crabbers, oyster hunters, sewage workers, policemen, carpet makers, ferrymen, and many others. And the poem reflects their day-to-day life, and how they go about earning their living. And also it reflects their identities. So it's the identities of the characters in the poem are strongly linked to the identity of the place itself. To these people, the river is a source of their sustenance. It's the only source, in fact, that helps them survive. It's what keeps them alive. Therefore, these people feel one with the river. And the river and the people are one entity, and they're inseparable. At the archetypal level, the river is also represented as a mother archetype. So it's a source of fertility. Even the act of washing themselves into the river and immersing their bodies into the water is also symbolic. This action is symbolic of birth, of rebirth, of fertility, and this unity with the river. It is interesting that in one of the lines of the poem, Oswald says, quote, "We jump from a tree into a pool. We change ourselves into the fish dimension," unquote. Well, here, Oswald uses this metaphor of the fish in order to convey this notion that there is this strong relationship between the animal world and the human world. By jumping from a tree, that is the land, into the river, she stresses this identification between the land and water, and therefore expresses the idea that the place that both of them, land and water, are actually manifestations of the same abode, of the same place that man originates from. Even for characters who loathe the place and they just want to depart and go somewhere else, it's really described as a very difficult thing to achieve. So one of the characters, for example, says, quote, "I'm trying to talk myself round to leaving this place, but there's roots growing round my mouth. My foot's in a rusted tin. One night I will." So although there is this hope, the character cherishes this hope of leaving the place, there are roots growing very deeply that are preventing him, that are holding him to the place. So the symbol of the roots emphasizes this strong bond between man and nature. So this is, it also symbolizes the power of the place to hold people to it, to attract people to the place, and also to keep them from going elsewhere. And Oswald describes some characters as enchanted by the river. Another character hears voices coming from the river and chooses to chase these voices down the river until one day that character is found dead, drowned. It's an enchanting place that pulls people to it. The poem says, quote, "Now he's the groom of the dart. I've seen him taking the shape of the sky, a bird, a blade, a fallen leaf, a stone. May he lie long in the inexplicable knot of the river's body. The idea of the character as the groom and the place as the bride introduces the concept of marriage. So there's this marriage between home and the inhabitants of the home, which again reinforces the bond between man and nature or place, environment. So it's not just a bond, a strong bond, it's actually a sacred bond between man and place. If we also go back to the origin of the name of the river, Dart, we find that it comes from the Celtic language, which means oak tree. Because she's saying that the origin of water was actually trees which come from the land. So they are both water and land, both represent the abode for the human race. As we can see in this poem, the power of the place is represented in the power that the river Dart exerts upon the inhabitants. They find themselves pulled to the river, to the place. They find themselves rooted in the spot. They find themselves enchanted by the river. And they also find themselves supported by the river because it's a source of their sustenance, of their survival. So Dart is actually a very clear manifestation of place power. It also shows the inspiring power of place. So it was actually, at the metapoetic level, it was Dart that inspired Alice Oswald to write this poem. And thank you very much for attending this presentation, and I hope to see you next time with another topic. Goodbye.